Welcome back to Hardball. Will Congress do something binding on Iraq? What will they do about the Taliban's apparent resurgence in Afghanistan and in Pakistan? U.S. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a Florida Democrat and a member of the Appropriations Committee. Congressman Chris Shays is a Connecticut Republican and a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Congressman Shays, you first. Let's talk about a bipartisan area, which is Afghanistan. Richard Holbrooke was just on. He said that's an area both parties can agree on. Are we working together? Is the United States operating in a way that's going to keep Karzai in power and the Taliban out of power?
Well, I hope so, and I do think we are working together with both Republicans and Democrats. The key in Afghanistan is we've gotten the Europeans to do some lifting there where they don't want to do it in Iraq. So we have, I think, more of the world community with us.
But I hear the Dutch haven't fought a war since '45. Some of these armies over there have not been in the field since World War II, and people wonder whether they have the fighting ability.
Well, I'm not sure they do, but give this administration credit for at least finding a way to engage the Europeans in something. As someone told me, Europe has never had what they call an away game since Afghanistan. Yeah. They've always depended on the United States.
Well, that's a question. Do you trust the Blue Helmets? Do you trust Europe to fight our fights with us?
I wish I shared my colleagues' enthusiasm for the bipartisan cooperation, but the President has asked for, and we only have about 20% of the total funds committed to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan to what should be and should have remained the central
fund.
You
mean it's getting the short end of the stick?
Oh, completely. And that's why there's been a resurgence of the Taliban. I mean, that's why we had a situation with the Vice President last night. We have moved the focus from the place it should have been, where we really knew that al-Qaeda was, to
Iraq. We got a spring offensive coming up. We've just Congressman Shays, 10,000 troops from the Taliban forces. They're al-Qaeda, basically. For all practical purposes, they are al-Qaeda. They are our enemy. They're the people we knocked out back when the President promised from 9/14 on he was going to go get them for doing what they did to us in New York and Washington and Pennsylvania. Are we going to continue on that front to be prosecuting that war against them, or have we let them go too far?
Well, I think we should have been able to capture a number of the Taliban, and we made some mistakes there. But Debbie and I do disagree significantly. I think you could have hundreds of thousands of troops in Afghanistan, and we'd end up like the Russians. It's not the kind of territory where you have roads. You have to fly your troops by helicopter. You have to march your troops in single file along passes. So
all the more reason why we shouldn't have taken the focus off Afghanistan.
No.
Pulling our
troops. But he says you're arguing it's numbers of troops.
It's focus, it's commitment, it's dedication, it's funding, it's strategy. Instead, we shifted the central focus from Afghanistan to Iraq and created, they're not words, that's reality. The reality on the ground there is that there's a resurgence of the Taliban, and now, instead of having the ability to continue to press on and find the people who actually perpetrated 9/11,
okay. Let me try to use this partisanship, which is appropriate in America, to argue between the two parties. Let me ask you this, Congressman Shays, about this partisan use the President's putting partisanship to. He's warning through Dick Cheney over there the other day. He's warning the Musharraf government, if they don't get tough enough with the Taliban, who are obviously holed up over there in Pakistan behind the border, that the Democrats in Congress are going to cut them off. In other words, the President's playing good cop to the Democrats' bad cop. Is it going to work? Is it smart politics?
Well, I mean, we do have to put pressure on Pakistan because that is where the haven is. It's not in Afghanistan. And, I guess Debbie and I disagree on the fact I do think we have more agreement in Afghanistan than we do in Iraq. And, my God, if we're losing agreement on Afghanistan, then we'll really have problems. But the Democrats had an opportunity to be bipartisan. They could have brought forward a resolution supporting the Iraqi study group recommendations, 3 recommendations, the third saying there should be a real effort to have us engage the entire community, including Iran and Syria, and they would have had support for that.
We brought forward a resolution that opposes, like the vast majority of this country.
We are beginning to call the neighbors into this discussion.
Well, and we should be. But the point I'm just trying to make is, why aren't we using the Iraqi study group that Democrats and Republicans both support?
Ask the President.
Debbie, you're interrupting me. Debbie, you're interrupting me. Let me just make this point.
Why we're not asking the Iraq study group, Chris?
No, but what I'm asking the Democrats in Congress is, why not bring a resolution that Republicans and Democrats can both agree on? We can support that, and there are 3 recommendations. Transfer the Iraqis to do the work that we're doing in the streets, have the Sunnis and Shia sit down with consequence and finally engage Iran and Syria. I could support a resolution like that, and so could a lot of other Republicans.
What we need to make sure we do, Chris, is we need to make sure that we have the armor and the protection and the funding and the training for our troops that we're sending over there. We should not be escalating this war. We should be making sure that we develop a plan, and we press the president to develop a plan to eventually bring our troops home and make sure that the Iraqis can stand up on their own and move forward with the democracy that we helped them create.
Can I ask you a question?
That is on the president. It's his responsibility. And Congress is finally, under Democratic leadership, pressing the president and putting the accountability where it belongs, where you and your colleagues asked no questions and gave him a blank check for the last 6 years, which was absolutely inexcusable.
Well, you know, it's strong, fierce words, but I've been to Iraq 15 times.
This is a strong, fierce situation, Chris. And the American people on November 7th insisted and voted to make sure that we could address what's going on in Iraq. They are deeply, deeply concerned.
Let me ask you,
Chris, you've got a great indication of how bipartisan we'll be able to be.
Well, let me ask you about
a problem.
This country's got some problems.
Bipartisan.
I sometimes worry about our country, and right now I'm worried about a few fronts. I'm worried about losing the war against the Taliban, because Karzai may be a real Victor Laszlo good guy, but apparently only is mayor of Kabul, and I worry about that. I worry about the fact the countryside over there is being dominated by the opium dealers, because money talks here or there, and as long as there's a market for the drugs, as we know there is in the world, including here, people make a lot more money on that than they do on corn when they're growing corn. Let me ask you about the market today, Congressman Shays. You're up in Connecticut. You're near the Wall Street situation. Is it the Chinese market drop of 9% that led to our drop of about 4% today? Is it just a correction in the price of stocks? My guy, Dan Saunders, I talked to him today at Wachovia. I said, what's going on? I like everybody else in this business. He said it's a correction. He said it's a, we thought one was coming. And the other concern is maybe that, the former Fed chairman, Alan Greenspan, just by saying that word, I think in the old days they used to say the word banana rather than the word recession, so they wouldn't say the word. He said it. And now that he said it, it's out of the bag. Is this going to bring more trouble in the next couple of days?
I got elected in '87. In October, we had a drop of 20 points. That was disastrous. This is 3.5 points. You have what in China I think is quite significant. You have a market that was many people think, it was well extended beyond what it should be. Yeah. So time will tell, Chris. We'll know tomorrow and the next day what it means.
Well, I'm hoping, as everybody's in the market hopes, that the Chinese have a command over their economy. And this is one time I want them to be what they are, which is dictators. And dictate it only should be 9%, because if it gets any worse, we'll get a lot worse. Anyway, thank you very much, U.S. Congressman Chris Shays and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz from down in Florida, where we all would like to be. Up next, what's going to happen with Iran? The New Yorker's Cy Hirsch is coming here with more about what this administration may be doing. Maybe they're pushing a war. They get closer and closer to engaging the enemy on the Iranian front. And later, CNBC's Jim Cramer on the day today on the stock market. You're watching Hardball on MSNBC.